My sister moved into the master bedroom of the house I bought with my own money. Sophia needs it more for her Instagram career, my mother said, dismissively sending me to the basement. 4 years, I let my family take advantage of my success. My credit card paid for their luxuries while I worked 80-hour weeks as a surgeon. But when they invited 50 strangers to use MY House as a content creation mansion, without my permission, something inside me snapped. What happened next changed our family forever, and taught me that sometimes setting boundaries is the greatest act of love. My name is Olivia Mitchell, and at 32, I'm a cardiovascular surgeon who just made the $950,000 mistake of thinking I could buy my family's respect with a dream home. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. My entire life had been a carefully choreographed dance of giving everything to my younger sister Mia while receiving nothing in return. Our parents had perfected the art of making her the sun around which our family orbited, while I was merely a distant planet, acknowledged only when they needed something. It started the day I closed on the house, a stunning Victorian in Boston's Beacon Hill neighborhood with 5 bedrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and the kind of character you can't find in new construction. The real estate journey had been exhausting, especially while maintaining my schedule at Massachusetts General Hospital, where I performed complex heart surgeries nearly every day. For 6 years, I'd saved every bonus, worked extra shifts, and sacrificed vacations to afford this place. When I gave my family the address and invited them to see it, I imagined their pride, their acknowledgement of what I'd accomplished. Instead, they arrived with a U-Haul. "We've decided to move in with you," my mother announced, as if this had been the plan all along. "Your father and I are tired of maintaining that big house in the suburbs, and Mia needs a proper space to launch her influencer career." I stood frozen in the foyer, keys still in my hand. "You're moving in? All of you?" I didn't. "Oh, don't look so shocked," my mother continued, already directing movers where to place their furniture. "Family supports family. Besides, your place is enormous for just one person. It's selfish, really. Selfish." The word they used whenever I showed the slightest resistance to their demands. Mia breezed past me, designer sunglasses perched on her head despite being indoors. At 26, she'd never held a job longer than 3 months, instead bouncing between careers that our parents enthusiastically funded: jewelry design, yoga instruction, app development, and now, apparently, social media influencing. "I'm taking the master suite," she called over her shoulder. "I need the natural light for my content. You don't mind working extra shifts to pay for this place anyway, right, Liv? It's not like you have a social life." Before I could respond, my father appeared, clapping me on the shoulder. "There's my successful daughter, always supporting the family. Your mother and I are so proud." Proud enough to assume ownership of a house they hadn't contributed a penny toward, apparently. That evening, as I unpacked my medical textbooks in the basement. Yes, they'd relegated me to the basement of my own home. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Elena. "How's the new house? Send pics." I hesitated before responding. My family decided to move in. All of them. Mia took the master bedroom. 3 dots appeared immediately, followed by a single word: "What?" Elena had witnessed this pattern throughout our friendship. She'd held me while I cried after my parents skipped my medical school graduation because Mia had a callback for a modeling job. She'd listened to my frustrations when they remortgaged their house to fund Mia's revolutionary app idea that never made it past the concept phase. She'd helped me pick up the pieces when Mia crashed the car I bought her, uninsured naturally, and I had to pay for repairs. "Olivia," Elena texted after my silence, "tell me you're not letting them do this." But I was. Just like always. The first month passed in a blur of entitlement and boundary violations. My credit card statements reflected the family's rapid colonization: furniture deliveries for Mia's aesthetic, premium subscriptions to content creation tools, endless takeout orders from upscale restaurants. My mother redecorated rooms without asking, while my father commandeered the 3rd floor as his man cave, complete with a new large-screen TV and gaming system, all charged to my account. Meanwhile, I continued my punishing schedule at the hospital, sometimes performing back-to-back surgeries that lasted 12 hours. I'd return home exhausted, only to find the house filled with Mia's collaborator friends, drinking my wine and lounging on furniture I'd never gotten the chance to enjoy myself. "Don't be such a downer, sis," Mia would say when I requested quiet. "We're networking. This is business." "Some business." Mia had fewer than 2,000 Instagram followers, most of them high school acquaintances and bots. Yet she spoke about her brand deals and sponsorships as if companies were lining up to work with her. Our parents encouraged this fantasy, praising her entrepreneurial spirit while dismissing my actual accomplishments in the medical field. The breaking point came on a rare weekend I had off. I'd planned to finally relax, maybe read a book in the window seat I'd fallen in love with during the house tour. Instead, I woke to the sound of dozens of voices, music, and camera equipment being set up in every room. Confused, I ventured upstairs to find my home transformed into what Mia proudly called a content creation mansion. Approximately 50 strangers, all aspiring influencers with ring lights and expensive cameras, were posing on my furniture, in my kitchen, even in my bathroom. Someone had set up a professional backdrop in the living room where a line of people waited to take the perfect selfie. "What is happening?" I asked, still in my pajamas, utterly dumbfounded. Mia, dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than some of my patients' monthly medications, beamed as she worked the room. "Isn't it amazing? I'm hosting a creator day. These are all influencers with major follow counts. They paid a registration fee to use the mansion for content. We're going to be featured on so many platforms." "You're charging people to use my house?" My voice had gone dangerously quiet. "Our house," my mother corrected, appearing with mimosas on a tray. And yes, Mia is quite the entrepreneur. She's already booked 3 more events this month. The exposure will be incredible for her brand. I looked around at strangers touching my things, sitting on furniture I was still making payments on, drinking champagne I'd been saving for a special occasion. In that moment, something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally broke. "Everyone out," I said. My mother laughed nervously. "Olivia, don't be rude to Mia's guests." "They're not guests," I replied, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "They're trespassers. And they have 5 minutes to leave before I call the police." The room fell silent. Mia's carefully contoured face crumpled in disbelief. "You wouldn't dare." I pulled out my phone and began dialing. "Try me." What followed was chaos. As influencers hurriedly packed up their equipment, demanding refunds from Mia, my family converged on me like wounded predators. "How could you embarrass your sister like this?" my father thundered. "After everything we've done for you," my mother added, tears already forming. "This is how you repay our support." Support? I nearly laughed. What support had they ever given me? Who had paid for my medical school when my college fund mysteriously disappeared into Mia's first failed business? Who had worked overnight shifts to make rent while they funded Mia's finding herself trips to Bali? Who had stood alone at graduations, achievements, and promotions while they lavished attention on Mia's every whim? "This ends now," I said when the last stranger had left, closing the door behind them. "I'm calling a family meeting tonight. 7 o'clock. Until then, I suggest you all think very carefully about your living arrangements." I spent the day at Elena's apartment, pacing her living room as she listened to my narrative of family exploitation. "I told you this would happen," she said without judgment. "What are you going to do?" "I've already done it," I replied, showing her my phone. On the screen was a confirmation email from Lawrence Mitchell, my attorney, and, coincidentally, Elena's brother. "Occupancy agreements?" Elena read, grinning slowly. "You magnificent bitch. When did you set this up?" "Before I even bought the house," I admitted. "Lawrence helped me add specific clauses to the deed. I just never thought I'd actually need to use them." That evening, I returned home to find my family waiting in the living room, their expressions ranging from Mia's sullen pout to my father's barely contained anger. "I hope you're here to apologize," my mother began. I set my briefcase on the coffee table and opened it, revealing a stack of legal documents. "No, I'm here to clarify the terms of your continued residence in my home." My father frowned. "Terms? What are you talking about?" I placed 3 identical agreements on the table. "These are legally binding occupancy agreements. They outline the conditions under which adults may reside in this house, including financial contributions, responsibilities, and rules regarding guests and use of the property." Mia snorted. "You can't be serious." "Deadly serious," I replied, meeting her gaze. "The deed to this house, which none of you bothered to read, contains specific clauses regarding occupancy. All adult residents must contribute to household expenses. That includes rent, utilities, and a security deposit.
Rent? My mother gasped. We're your family.
Yes, and family respects boundaries, I countered. The master bedroom you're occupying, Mia? That's $2,500 a month. The content creation studio you've set up in what was supposed to be my home office? Another $1,000. Mom and Dad, the third floor suite is $2,200. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red.
This is extortion. We're not paying you to live with our own daughter.
Then you're not living with me, I said simply. You have 30 days to either sign these agreements or find alternative housing. What followed was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. Mia burst into tears, her usual strategy when things didn't go her way. My mother oscillated between guilt-tripping, after all we've sacrificed for you, and catastrophizing, you'll destroy this family. My father threatened, cajoled, and eventually resorted to cold silence. But for the first time in my life, I didn't cave. The agreements are non-negotiable, I said as I stood to leave.
30 days. Choose wisely.
The next month was psychological warfare. My family deployed every manipulation tactic they'd perfected over the years. They recruited extended family members to pressure me, with aunts, uncles, and cousins calling daily to lecture about family loyalty. They attempted to embarrass me publicly, with Mia posting tearful videos about being homeless, despite her designer wardrobe and frequent spa visits, still on my credit card, which I was in the process of canceling. They tried bargaining. Perhaps they could contribute in other ways. Mia could promote my boring doctor life on her platform, giving me exposure. My mother could redecorate the entire house according to her taste. My father could manage my finances, which was rich considering his history of questionable investments. When none of these tactics worked, they resorted to anger. Family dinners became battlegrounds of passive-aggressive comments and outright hostility. My belongings mysteriously disappeared or were damaged. The household temperature was either freezing or sweltering, with the thermostat being adjusted whenever I was at work. Through it all, I remained calm, focused, and immovable. The agreements stayed on the table, unsigned. 3 days before the deadline, I discovered that Mia had been advertising my home as a luxury content creation space on her social media, charging other aspiring influencers for photo shoots when I wasn't home. She'd even created a website with a booking system and payment portal, all without my knowledge or consent. That evening, when I returned from a particularly difficult surgery to find yet another unauthorized networking event in full swing, I didn't bother with warnings. I simply walked to the electrical panel and cut the power to the entire house. In the confused darkness, illuminated only by phone flashlights, I made my final stand. Everyone who doesn't live here, out. Or I call the police and press trespassing charges. After the strangers had departed, many demanding refunds that Mia couldn't provide, my family confronted me in the kitchen. You've changed, my mother accused, her voice trembling with either genuine emotion or practiced manipulation. I could no longer tell the difference.
You're not the daughter we raised.
You're right, I agreed. I'm not your doormat anymore. The deadline stands. Sign the agreements or move out. On the morning of the 30th day, I arrived home from an overnight shift to find the house eerily quiet. In the kitchen was a note in my mother's handwriting.
Olivia.
*, we could never have imagined you would choose money over family. Since you've made your priorities clear, we've decided to remove ourselves from your life. Perhaps someday you'll realize what you've thrown away. *. Don't worry about Mia. Unlike you, we will always support her dreams, no matter the sacrifice. *.
Mom and Dad.
I stood in the sudden emptiness of my house, truly mine now, and felt an unexpected wave of emotion. Not regret or guilt as they had intended, but relief so profound it brought me to my knees.
They were gone.
For the first time in my adult life, I didn't have to carry them. In the weeks that followed, I discovered the extent of their sense of entitlement. They had taken furniture I'd purchased, kitchen appliances, even artwork from the walls. My credit card showed last-minute charges at high-end stores and restaurants, their parting gifts to themselves. I canceled the card, filed fraud claims for the unauthorized charges, and slowly began reclaiming my space. The master bedroom, now empty of Mia's influencer paraphernalia, became mine. I painted the walls a soothing sage green, invested in luxurious bedding, and positioned my reading chair by the window that offered a view of the Boston skyline. The home office returned to its intended purpose, with medical journals replacing ring lights and backdrop screens. My family, meanwhile, had moved back to their house in the suburbs, the one they'd claimed was too much to maintain. Apparently, it became manageable again when it was the only option. Mia's social media presence dimmed considerably without the mansion backdrop. Posts about luxury and aspiration gave way to vague inspirational quotes and complaints about haters and toxic people who didn't support her journey. Extended family members who had been enlisted in the campaign against me gradually stopped calling as the true story emerged. Some even reached out to apologize, admitting they'd only heard a heavily edited version of events. My Aunt Claudia, my mother's sister, visited for tea one afternoon. "I've watched this pattern for years," she confessed, stirring honey into her cup. "Your mother did the same thing to me when we were young. Some people are takers, Olivia. They don't change unless they're forced to." 6 months after the eviction, I received a text message from Mia. "Can we talk?" Against my better judgment, and Elena's explicit advice, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop, neutral territory away from the house she still likely considered partially hers. She arrived looking different, less polished, more authentic. The designer clothes had been replaced with simple jeans and a sweater. The elaborate makeup was gone, revealing the natural beauty she'd always hidden under filters and contour. "I got a job," she said after we'd settled with our drinks.
"Actually, 2 jobs.
Receptionist at a gym during the day, waitressing on weekends." I nodded, unsure how to respond.
Was this another manipulation tactic? A prelude to asking for money?
"Mom and Dad are furious," she continued. "They think I'm betraying them by working menial jobs instead of focusing on my influencer career." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Turns out, no one wants to sponsor someone who lives in a basic suburban house with middle-aged parents." "I'm sorry it didn't work out," I said carefully.
"Don't be." Mia met my eyes directly.
"It wasn't working before, either. I just didn't want to admit it. Do you know how exhausting it is to pretend your life is perfect all the time? To create this facade of success when you're completely dependent on others." For the first time, I glimpsed the insecurity beneath my sister's entitled exterior, the pressure she'd felt to maintain the golden child image our parents had created for her. "The thing is," she continued, "no one ever expected anything from me. Mom and Dad treated me like I was too special, too creative for ordinary responsibilities.
You were the responsible one, the achiever.
I was just decorative." I hadn't considered this perspective before, that being the favored child might have been its own kind of cage.
"I'm not asking for anything," Mia assured me, perhaps reading the caution in my expression.
"I just wanted to say I understand now why you did what you did.
And I'm sorry. For everything."
That conversation marked the beginning of a slow, cautious reconnection. Not with our parents, who remained entrenched in their narrative of my betrayal, but between Mia and me as sisters rather than competitors in an unbalanced family system. Over the next year, Mia steadily built a life independent from our parents' influence. She moved into a small apartment with roommates, enrolled in community college courses, and even started dating someone our mother deemed not ambitious enough. A kind, stable electrician who treated her with genuine respect rather than worship. On rare occasions, she would visit my house, no longer viewing it as an extension of her influencer fantasy but simply as her sister's home. We'd share a bottle of wine on the porch swing, talking about her classes or my patients, carefully rebuilding a relationship that had never really existed before. Our parents remained distant, occasionally sending passive-aggressive holiday cards or messages through relatives, always implying that the door to reconciliation was open, if only I would apologize for my cruelty and materialism. But something fundamental had shifted in me. The guilt that had driven my decisions for decades had finally lifted. I understood now that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was necessary for authentic relationships. That sometimes love requires standing firm rather than giving in. That my worth wasn't measured by how much I sacrificed for others, but by how truthfully I lived my own life. Last month, I performed a heart transplant on a 17-year-old girl, one of the most challenging surgeries of my career. Afterward, her mother hugged me, whispering tearful thanks for giving her daughter a future. That evening, as I sat in the reading nook of my peaceful home, I realized that I'd finally given myself the same gift, a future determined by my own choices rather than others' expectations. Mia texted me a photo of her first college transcript, straight as, with a special commendation from her psychology professor. "Turns out I'm not just decorative after all," she wrote.
"Thanks for being the first person who expected more from me."
Setting boundaries had cost me the family I thought I needed, but it had given me something far more valuable. The family that was actually possible. Not the fantasy of appreciation and reciprocity I'd chased for so long, but the reality of authentic connection built on mutual respect.
Sometimes, the most loving thing we can do, for ourselves and others, is to say no. To require better.
To demand truth over comfort. It's a lesson that cost me $950,000 and a lifetime of trying to buy love that was never for sale. But as I fall asleep each night in the master bedroom of the house that is finally, truly mine, I know it was worth every penny.